Welcome to the first episode of the Allan Ellis Show. I'm Allan Ellis, and today we have a guest of guests. So I met this man about a year ago, and he is a remarkable, remarkable guy. He's got all kinds of talents. Now, what is your real name?
My full legal name is in Spanish or in English, sir?
Whatever you'd like. It's
Okay.
easiest.
Okay.
So
For our easiest, it's just better to go with Enoch.
All right.
But my full legal name is Adriel Meza Felix.
Okay. So, it's pretty amazing that when I was looking for somebody to come and do our social media and, help out with various other things. And in the ad, I wanted someone that could speak Spanish. I wanted someone who's bilingual. So Adriel comes in and he does the interview, and then I asked him in Spanish. I said, este papel dice tú hablas español. And he starts talking in Spanish to me like, yo, dude, where did you learn to speak Spanish like that in school? And he goes, no, I'm from Mexico. This is my Bob Goldstein face.
My Bob Goldstein
Tell me about Bob Goldstein face.
Bob Goldstein face is what I use to get away with a few things, primarily in professional settings. I use it to get ahead of the game a little bit. And so I trick the Hispanics into thinking that I'm white, so they like to talk rap, and so they talk in the background, and I'm listening the entire time. And I use it for the Caucasians to be a little bit more available to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after a little bit, they start realizing that I'm a mutt, and then they're like, okay, and then it changes.
Yeah. So part of what our podcast is talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit, because everybody's in pursuit of something, right?
Sure.
Okay. So tell me just a little bit about your story. Where were you born? How did you wind up in Estados Unidos?
Estados Unidos. So I was born in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, to a family of pastors, and my mom and dad had been working for staff for various churches, and they had been sent to the Isla de la Piedra, and they opened the first church there, which was an island, and they were faced with a few different difficulties based on the different political changes that were happening in the area. And it was kind of funny because once they arose and they raised up the church and there's a temple and everything, because they built it from scratch with their own two hands. My mom used to give lectures underneath a palm tree. And once they got all together, the bishop at the time here in the States that was taking care of the Mexican churches, because in the 90s, what was the apostolic church was just being built by pieces. He calls my dad and he says, hey, I'd like it if you really came out to Phoenix. Not to Phoenix, sorry, to Queen Creek, Arizona, and lead the temple that's already standing there. And my mom and dad went back and forth. My dad was a salesman for Sharon Williams. So he was a regional manager, and he was also selling with Gamesa cookies. So at the time, he had his bank account pretty steadily going up, and my mom was a surgeon. And so we're going back and forth. Well, they were going back and forth, and then last minute, they made the choice to follow God's calling for their lives, and they made their way here to the States. And I landed in Queen Creek at around the age of 4, and then I had my 5th birthday in Queen Creek, and I distinctly remember it because the power went out in the trailer home that the church had gotten us. And so we spent my birthday with an oil lamp, a cupcake, and a howling coyote in the background. It was a good time.
Welcome to Queen Creek.
Welcome to Queen Creek.
Right. Yeah. This episode of the Allan Ellis Show is sponsored by Veterans Burial Center. And Veterans Burial Center, what their job is to make sure that veterans and their spouses, if they have one, get pre-registered so the family doesn't have to wait an inordinate amount of time. And what else they're going to do is help you negotiate the maze of veterans burial benefits. And so you can contact them at veteransburialcenter.com. That's veteransburialcenter.com. I know some of your story. the viewers and the listeners, they don't know your story. So your mom was a surgeon.
Correct.
And I know she got sick.
Yeah.
And what really impressed me was you had some plans in place before she got sick.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
So, actually, our editor, Caesar, him and I, we met in high school. And so in high school, I had this idea because we had a music professor at the time, and he's, I think he might still be teaching at the high school. And he was very strict with me. Because when I came in, I grabbed the bass guitar that was there and I started slapping because I had just learned how to slap. And I was super excited, and he put me into a discipline mode. And so it was kind of his fault that he propelled me towards what would be, at the time, what I thought was going to be my music career. And so I went to a military ball that I had to go with the Spanish team because I took Spanish for Spanish speakers because I was too lazy to take any other language at the time. Thought it'd just be easier.
You took Spanish for Spanish speakers?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be easier than taking French or German or anything else at the time.
Okay.
And I was in the medical magnet program because my mom was super like, go. So I had a plan to study medicine because I was already there. And then I said, well, why not? I'll take my shot at a few different colleges because I want to be a musician. And that's what I want to do, and it's going to keep the lights on. And so I started getting myself together, and I auditioned at a few different places while I was gigging and other things like that. And then my mom got really sick. She had already been sick when I was 13. That's a whole nother situation, actually, in the sense that she got breast cancer, and some kid made fun of her because the chemo causes people to go bald. And I don't really remember. I saw red, and then I opened my eyes, and the kid's nose was bent the other direction.
Okay.
And so when she got sick again, it was kind of one of those do or die moments. And the only place that could give her treatment at the time was in LA. And we had to make our trips because that's where we had everything set in place. Yeah. And we just kept going back and forth. And I started kind of disappearing from school because I had to take care of what I had to take care of. And my dad was pastoring at the same time. And so a church is a 24-hour gig, and it never stops. So he was on the phone, and I was on the phone, and I was taking care of the music at the church. And then luckily we had a good co-pastor at the time that really, really helped us out. But it was a lot of back and forth. And so when I turned 18, I made a choice. And I said, you know what, I'm going to have to put everything away. And I had a nice little scholarship to a college, and I was going to go and study medicine. And I had I was in good standing in my medical magnet program, but I had to pull out and focus on everything. And so I took care of her until she passed away the week of New Year's. It was actually a Saturday leading to Sunday. And I distinctly remember she passed away, and then the morgue came, they picked her up, they took her, and there was no one to lead the service because the co-pastor was distraught. None of the ministers wanted to start the service, and the musicians were just, in pain because the church had spent about probably a year and a half praying for her. And she did the classic, she got really better, she got really good, and then just, that was it. And I had to step up that day.
And how old were you?
I was 18.
18. So if you were giving somebody, an 18-year-old, advice about making decisions that are tough decisions to make, and they came to you and said, hey, what do you think? Tell them the truth.
It's not easy. It's not going to get any easier. But the people around you need to be inspired, and they need to be hopeful. Right after I performed that day, because it really was more of a performance, because on the inside I was broken. The youth in my church took a really big dip, and in the months following, they gained up strength, and they all came together and they worked hard and they put themselves together. And some of my good friends ended up, instead of going through a season of depression, they kind of pushed forward because they saw that I was pushing forward.
Yeah, and so you do a lot with musical people.
Yeah.
I've seen you here in the office, and you teach people music. So, what do you like about teaching people music?
I like the fact that anybody can do it. People go with this mentality that there's like and I guess TV and the internet and stuff, they're like, it's an X factor. And I'm like, yeah, there's an X factor too, who can progress
Right.
career wise. Anybody can make a sound. And I take the reference in Ephesians when Paul says that it's kind of like an emergency situation. He's like, I don't know what to do, so let's just sing. And he's like, everybody sing. I don't care if you're off key. I don't care if you don't know where you're going. I don't care if you don't know all the lyrics. We're all singing together. Everybody make some noise.
So you could help me sing.
So I can help you sing. I can help anybody sing.
Help me sing.
I will. See, there you go.
So that's pretty good.
Hey.
That's pretty good.
I like it.
Yeah. And so, what do you hope to when you're teaching somebody music? What's your goal when you work?
For them to perform where they want to. If that's a church, if that's a bar, if that's a stadium, wherever they're going to want to perform, that's where I want them to be. If they want to be able to be there for their family and perform, if they want to perform for their loved ones. I mean, one of the best things that helped my mom through a lot of the nights of pain was that she would say, she would yell and say, "Boy, go get your guitar," and then I would sit there until around 4 a.m. until she finally calmed down, and she would sing and sing and sing and sing until she felt comfortable.
So it sounds like singing really helps people get over a lot of things.
Yeah, music in general. Sometimes you just need to find an outlet. I mean, if that outlet is a gym, if it's a sport, if it's art, whatever it is, it's important to have something to put your emotions into, so that you can make choices without being influenced by them, that are for the betterment of your life and for those around you.
Yeah, very cool. Now, the first episode of the Allan Ellis Show is sponsored by Veterans Burial Center. And what Veterans Burial Center does is make sure veterans and their spouses, if they have one, get pre-registered so the family does not have to wait an inordinate amount of time for services. So if you want to get registered, if you're a veteran, you're a spouse of a veteran, you want to get pre-registered, you can contact them on veteransburialcenter.com. That's veteransburialcenter.com. And I'm Allan Ellis, and I look forward to talking with you soon. So you got me this Starfleet Command Star Trek cup for Christmas.
Oh, yes.
And so it seems like you like things that have to do with space.
Oh, I love space.
Yeah, and so recently, we'll spend some time on this, but recently they just had things at the Congressional in Washington, D.C. about releasing of the UFO things. So I've heard through the grapevine around here that you like something about UFOs.
A little bit, yeah.
Is that a hobby?
It is. I like the unknown, and I'm not scared of it. I'd rather dive in deep. I mean, there's plenty of things that just aren't explained in the world, and it's our job to know. I mean, and be intrigued instead of being afraid.
So do you have like a tinfoil hat that you wear?
No. I wish. I really
You know, so you can get all those the waves in.
Yeah. No, I wish. Actually, I think they're supposed to block the waves out. They're supposed to not let them.
Oh, is that? Well, see, I don't know. I don't have one.
Yeah.
So maybe you got one.
Hey, no. I've never. I don't think they would work. I would think that you would need a different kind of material. But
and so, you used to be an on the road band person, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A
So
while there.
So, what made you decide to do that?
Well, after my mom died, I didn't want to be at home. And my dad took a little bit of a hiatus for about 4 months. So the first month, I stayed there, and I was like, man, this sucks. And I got a really good opportunity. They were like, hey, we need a bass player. And I said, sign me up. And so I was going back and forth between Texas, California, different places in Mexico, and I did a bunch of just random traveling. And I made some money, and then I also lost some money, and then I made money, and then I lost money, and In the end, I realized I didn't know anything about business.
Mhm.
So the problem was that I didn't have a problem making a buck, but I had a problem keeping it.
Yeah, that's a lot of people have a problem keeping it. Yeah, absolutely. So, being on the road, that you must have some good stories to tell. Come on, tell us. They want to hear. They want to see about the good story.
Okay, one of the good stories is I was touring with this band a little bit, and we got invited to perform in Texas. And so I prepped everything, and I was leading at the time, so we get all the instruments on board. The bass player rented this nice Dodge Caravan at the time, black with the big red Brembo brakes, and everything's just going. And on our way back, there's a checkpoint, and the conga player and general percussionist, he yells from the background. He's like, "Hey, by the way, guys, I forgot my visa." And I turn around and I'm like, "You did what?" And then the guy driving, the bass player, he's also, because we're Hispanic, some of us aren't fully legal. He's on the DACA program too. And so turns around, he's like, "Well, I can't drive." And then I was like, "I have a suspended license. I can't drive." And then everybody's turning around like, "What are we gonna do?"
So you got a van full of people, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Of misfits.
Misfits. There you go.
100% misfits. And actually, what was worst about that situation, part of that, we never got invited back there again, too. So my guys had a bad reputation of talking too much.
So what happened at the checkpoint?
Oh, at the checkpoint, right? Going back to the checkpoint. I freaked out and I told everybody to pretend they were asleep. And my bass player said, "You know what? I'm gonna drive up to. I'm gonna drive past this. There's like a way to go around it, quote unquote. It's like probably like 3 a.m, and we go up there, and checkpoint was there too, which we had never imagined because we had gone through there before with no problems, and so we didn't know what to do. And I told him, "You know what, man? Just tell them that everybody's asleep. And if they ask you anything, I can't say what we said because I'm sure that we probably broke a few federal laws with that."
Yeah, we don't want to go there.
Yeah, and they looked, and the dude looked in the window, and I looked at him through I really did just pretend to be asleep. I have no idea how we got back. And as we were coming back, the tire popped. So it was kind of like we were stranded, no help, nothing to do, and
No papers.
no papers. And it was a bit of a situation, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the more PG one that I can tell
Okay.
without getting into
All
too
right.
many issues.
So, I met my wife when I was in the Army.
Oh yes.
We were 19. No, I was 18. 18 we met. So I've known her since we were 18. We got married when we were 19.
Mm-hmm.
Been married at the end of this year 39 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's longer than most people have a job. Man.
Yeah. Well, and so you're married,
Yes,
and there's a story there for sure.
there is
So-
a bad story there.
So let's start at the beginning.
The beginning. Okay. So I was going to be a freshman in high school. It was my summer. And my wife was already a freshman in high school, and her family had came to our local church at the time. And I had not hit puberty yet. I was a late bloomer. So now I'm 6'2". I think right now I'm 280 pounds. But at the time, I was probably like 5'4", 5'3". I was a smaller guy. And she had, obviously girls mature faster. And so she was already, blooming and everything else. And my solution, I had no game, no ability to do anything. Later on in my life, I developed that. But that's a different situation. I didn't know what to do. So she was sitting there with a friend of mine, and I just sat next to them, very awkward, and was like, "Hi, my name is Adriel. How are you doing today?" And I just kind of stared.
Right.
And she completely ignored me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she kind of just looked at me, kept the conversation going with my friend, and then just left the table, left me hanging. It was a really weird situation. But as time went on, our families hung out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, my old man was the pastor, and her dad was a bass player, so they were pretty much in sync the entire time.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, hey, you're hanging out, and we started kind of talking as young people do, as kids do, and I made a very crucial mistake, man. So I've always loved rock and roll. It was like my pride and joy growing up, and so this girl came, and I remember we would have a small group for young
Mm-hmm.
for young kids, and so in the small group, the whole situation started that like, oh, we're gonna invite a bunch of people at random and stuff, and the other stuff was that they wanted to do some other kinds of programs that were outside of church and other things like that. So I was like, okay, whatever. And this girl came, and so guys, I this nice hot goth girl came in, and I got hooked pretty fast.
On the goth girl.
On the goth girl, yeah. Because at the time, since I didn't know signals or what anything meant, I assumed that, actually prior to even that, I had gone to her house on Christmas. I left her a gift, and her dad opened the door, and I freaked out because her dad's a pretty tall guy. He's 6'1". He's 6'1". So I was a kid just staring up, and I was like, "Hi, here's the present." And she took her gift. Everything was fine. I actually had my mom go and help me pick out gifts, and I was just completely no ability to save myself. And I took him opening the door as, "You're not allowed in."
Right.
So I ran away, and I left. And she's gonna kill me. I'm not gonna tell the rest of that part of the story.
So you go from this nerdy boy, right?
Yeah.
And you had to have asked her to marry you somewhere along the line.
Well, the thing is that I ended up picking up an electric guitar, and I ended up picking up a bass, and chicks like guys that play music. It does happen if you're decent enough. If you can shred, kind of, girls like that sometimes. And so when I got hooked onto the goth girl, she was like, no, and she was mad at me, and I didn't understand why she was mad at me. I was like, well, you don't like me. And we both went on our way. We grew as kids grow. And then right around the time that we were, I was 20, she was 21, we started hanging out again as friends. Only because my best friend Jeremy was really good friends with him. So they would go and they would go out, they would go bowling, and like all him and their family and everything. And in reality, that's the reason why we started hanging out again. And we started hanging out, and I would tell her about the girls I was dating. She would tell me about the guys she was dating.
Right.
And we would kind of exchange tips to each other as to what to do.
So when did you ask her to marry you?
Well, I asked her on a date first.
Well, that's good.
And I asked her on a date when I was 22.
Okay.
I freaked out. And
you're still freaking out for 6 years later.
Yeah. Yes, I'm still freaking out. And she said yes. We went on this date. I took her to Johnny Rockets, which is unfortunately not as great as it used to be. Johnny Rockets, please fix yourself. And then they had bottomless fries, man. It was amazing. And so I went in. We ate. We went to the drive-in and everything. I tried to make it like if I was in Greece. You know, I took her out in a nice like red car, everything. You know, the whole works. And I was 23. This was right before the pandemic. Right around the time of the pandemic. And we were already basically living together at that point because I was working at a car dealership. And I was working 6 a.m. to probably 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And she was getting really late off of work because she was like the only dental assistant at her office at the time. So it's kind of like we were already doing that. And then since I've never been able to keep a buck, I can only make them. I would just kind of be like, hey, here's my debit card. Can you make sure I don't spend any of my money? And it was kind of like we were already going back and forth, and we were already dating. And I told her to go to Westgate, that we were going to meet there. And I took an acoustic guitar, and I sang Nat King Cole's Love. And she said yes for some reason. And when she said yes, my little heart went a flutter, and we got an apartment there. And in that area, and everything was smooth up until the pandemic. when things went.
Yeah, well, that's when you find out, because you've been married how long now?
2 years.
Yeah, see, so you're still spit sharing,
Yeah, man.
right?
Yeah.
You're still spit sharing. So that's a little bit about your life. So tell me, what do you think liberty means to you?
Liberty.
Because there's a difference between liberty and freedom.
Is there? I didn't know that. Yeah. In my mind, liberty means more than freedom. Not necessarily that freedom's kind of like the general, well, you're free. But liberty does mean that no matter what the situation is, you can strive for it. So sometimes we get attached to things that just aren't for us. And so being able to free yourself from that situation and just take over what you need to take over. I mean, it's just kind of like the thing that I love about the States. Sometimes my family back in Mexico, they're like, why don't you come back? And I'm like, I like the fact that at any point, if we want to take arms, we can take arms. That's just what it is, that people here have the right to choose what they want to do.
Well, I agree, but we won't go too deep in that because we might, get suppressed.
Oh, yes.
We don't want to get suppressed. We want to be here for the people. So.
Yeah, that's true.
So liberty is very good because liberty means you can do things because we have liberty, but necessarily freedom, right? So you have freedom of speech, but we're not going to yell fire in a crowded theater, right?
Right.
That's against the law. So in pursuit, everybody's in pursuit of something. So what are you in pursuit of?
I am in
and why?
And why? I am in the pursuit of happiness. It sounds so cliche when I said that out loud. Like, it's going to sound so good. It's not. But I'm in the pursuit of true happiness and finding yourself to be satisfied with what is there. I'm a very ambitious guy. I want everything all the time. And you can understand that. Sometimes you just want to have everything under control and everything has to be done.
I want it now.
Now. And but I've learned to that there's a few things that make me just happy. Something about just driving a muscle car makes me feel better. Something about just having a place doesn't have to be very big or very small. And so being able to be happy no matter what the situation is what I strive for. I learned the hard way that there are good times and there are bad times and there are really bad times. So being happy in all those situations and finding the joy in what's to come.
So what does success mean to you?
Success goes back to being happy. That you don't freak out because things didn't go out perfectly. And even more so, accepting success to me means accepting that life is chaotic. Mm-hmm. And there's no controlling the chaos. Mm-hmm. And there's people that are like, well, if I just micromanage every aspect of my life, it's going to work. And it's like, no, man. It's a wave and you just got to ride it. And so your success is, of course, you got to be disciplined and you got to be focused, but you have to accept the chaos for what it is. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's been what's made me successful. Just accepting that it is what it is. And I can't change the chaos, but I can change the outcome of how I react to the situation.
So you can control your attitude, your emotions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, very good. Well, we're so glad that you came and that you could be here. And you helped set up this whole entire studio.
Yeah.
We got Caesar over here behind the scenes doing his thing down there. And so we just want to thank you for being here with us today. And what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to find out more content at allanellis.com. You go there, you go to allanellis.com, and you'll be able to find all kinds of cool things that we have to offer. Now, also, we wanted to let you know that this episode of the Allan Ellis Show is sponsored by Veterans Burial Center. And Veterans Burial Center, what their job is to make sure that veterans and their spouses, if they have one, get pre-registered so the family doesn't have to wait an inordinate amount of time. And what else they're going to do is help you negotiate the maze of veterans burial benefits. And so you can contact them at veteransburialcenter.com. That's veteransburialcenter.com. gmail.com. So I'm Allan Ellis. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Allan Ellis Show.